We are back in action. One show is not enough anymore here at Betting You, here at Odd Chopper. Too much college football. We talked about the marquee games. Yes, we got into USC and Michigan, all the big ranked opponents. What about the little guys? What about the random schools? What about the big time spreads? Sometimes, often, in my opinion, there's more value on the betting board in this episode. Now we are here, Ben Raza, Makajeski. We're diving into weird games, the requested games. We're going to get to all of it. Rapid fire, best bets, podcast giveaway. Listen up for that. Don't miss it. Sir, it's going to get weird. There's a weird list of games.
Very weird list of games, but we're starting to get conference matchups in these smaller conferences, Sun Belt, CUSA, AAC.
Oh, yeah.
I like when we start to level the competition between these. We get a lot of good spots early on when certain teams have been blown up by three hard non-conference opponents and other teams have been playing like FCS and cupcakes. So I think it's a really fun slate and I'm excited for it. You know, like one of those games I wish was on this slate, Washington State, San Jose. I'm on Washington State for that exact reason, but we have games like that. It'll be fun.
Let's get into it. First game is going to be, it's going to set the tone for this type of show. So when you see this, just know what you're getting into. Charlotte takes on Indiana. Dear God, it's a over 4 touchdown spread now. We were talking about this a little. Both of us, I think, are on the Indiana side in terms of where we're interested. You bet them already, did you not?
I bet Indiana on Sunday night. Yeah.
Okay.
I bet them on Sunday night like every single week. It's kind of rinse and repeat with them right now. You bet them immediately on Sunday when it opens. Their line moves in their favor. If you miss it, you bet their alt lines and they still cover.
Yeah, they've been awesome. They've crushed. Bet them against UCLA last week. Western Illinois is not a real team. They crushed Florida International in week 1. This team's got something going on. And Charlotte, I think, is in the legit bottom. They're really bad.
I actually like Charlotte's roster. The problem is they're all hurt. They're on a 3rd-string quarterback right now, and that's Trexler Ivy, so we've seen a lot of him. He started basically the entire year last year, and his efficiency metrics are putrid. He is a career 57% completion, 6.5 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, negative 90 career rushing yards, 7 big-time throws, 14 turnover-worthy plays. He's not playing behind a great O-line. They're allowing a 28.5% pressure rate. One of his top receivers, Justin Olsen, missed week 3. A couple defenders are out for this team. So it's just they're walking wounded. And I think people will glance at their schedule and see one data point that they might find useful, that North Carolina game. They only lost 38-20. UNC held out a ton of guys, and they had a lot of players in the game that, you know, like you turn an ankle slightly, you get a bruise on your quad. Everyone who had a situation like that, boom, out of the game. Like Nesbitt came out, Hampton came out, a ton of their players came out. They rotated QBs. It was also the first start for Connor Harrell, the new QB, after we saw the starter go down in week 1 for North Carolina. So I'm not reading too much into that data point. Since then, they just played Gardner-Webb to a 1-point game, and that was legit dead even in yards per play, 5.7 to 5.7. And Gardner-Webb missed a field goal that would have got them the win. On the other side, I don't think there's really anything to say. Indiana has been awesome. Nothing in their efficiency metrics is fraudulent. The only concern I really have is they got a couple guys on defense that are going to miss the first half because they got targeting penalties. But I don't even think that matters. They beat down UCLA. We've seen them dominate every single step of the way. And the big thing with them is they're deep. So when you see this play towards the spread, which it has in multiple games this year for Indiana, they're not afraid to just blow you out and get those extra guys that are pretty good, the depth experience. I have no problem with it beyond 28. I think alt lines are in play if you want to like ladder this up again, as has been successful with Indiana throughout the season.
Cool team, no doubt about it. Yeah, they may end up on my card as well. This team was on my card to open the year, and they were disgracefully bad, and that would be Jacksonville State. Now, they take on Southern Miss, who is another team that I was really low on heading into the season, and Jacksonville State is favored in this game. It's inside a touchdown. Can we go back to this team? Because every time I've seen them, it has not been good this year.
I would rather play Southern Miss. I think there's an opportunity to take them as an underdog. I might sprinkle them on the money line, but a +6.5 is what I took earlier. It hasn't moved enough where I'm like off it or anything.
Yeah, it's out there. 6.5.
6.5 is still out there. Nice.
Yep.
Okay. They played Kentucky in week 1. It should have been worse. They did not play the whole game after there was some weather stuff. They lost to USF in their most recent game, but that was really competitive, and it was basically just turnovers that cost them. They actually were outgaining USF the entire game, 8.0 yards per play to 6.9 for USF. That was pretty concerning. And I think the reason like some of those turnovers occurred is Tate Rodemaker got injured in the game. He left with an ankle injury, but he's been working with the first team in practice, so he's expected to play. And I don't think you have to worry about any dumb backup situation like they did in their last game. For Jacksonville State, man, this team has been egregiously bad. They should have beat Eastern Michigan. They outgained them 6.3 yards per play to 4.9, but they had a ton of turnovers on down, a lot of 4th and 1s they missed. They also, missed the field goal in overtime that at least would have kept the game going. I don't know if they would have won, but you can't be missing field goals to just give Eastern Michigan easy scores. But outside of that, they got beat down by Coastal Carolina, who's a team I'm not really that optimistic in. And when you start to look at power ratings and efficiency metrics, I actually have Southern Miss slightly ahead of this team. So I think there's some opportunities to potentially buy low on Southern Miss with their quarterback being healthy enough to play. We know what Jacksonville State wants to do. They try to be a power run game, but they haven't had a lot of success doing that so far this year. Their offensive line has been putrid. They're 127th in pass blocking, 130th in run blocking. Their defense is 101st. They're not really good anywhere. Southern Miss is not good either, but at least they're 81st. So you have like a 20-point jump. The O-line gap is similar as well. For pass blocking, it's 90th for Southern Miss to 127th for Jacksonville State. 119th for Southern Miss run blocking to 130th for Jacksonville State. There's just a lot of little edges Southern Miss's direction that kind of overcome this road trip, in my opinion. So I'll take the points in this spot. Not afraid of sprinkling money line stuff either.
Moving on, how did this game get in here? I mean, I guess they belong with these teams, but Arkansas, not Arkansas State, Arkansas and Auburn. Okay, a little SEC clash. Obviously not the teams at the top. You have a competitive 2.5, 3-point spread here. We've seen, the Hogs, you've been on them in different spots. Auburn, I watched them against Cal throw 5 picks. I don't know what they were doing in that game. Both of these teams really could use this type of win. Who do you lean to?
I would like to take Auburn. The only thing that has me hesitating is the quarterback change. They bench Peyton Thorne, which might be a good thing.
I think it's a good thing.
They should have beat Cal, not even close. They outgained them. It was literally just 5 turnovers cost them the game. You can't turn the ball over 5 times. Now you turn to Hank Brown, who early returns are okay. I don't think we've really seen enough of him. All we've seen is just against New Mexico. We know New Mexico has an atrocious defense. So I think the jury's still out, but it's also how bad could he possibly be? Can he be worse than Peyton Thorne? I don't think so. I think Cam Coleman's also going to be back in this game. He missed the week 3 contest against New Mexico, so that's your 5-star receiver. Should be pretty good. Overall, Auburn has pretty decent efficiency metrics, and Auburn is awesome on defense. They're 25th overall. That's how they've stayed in games, won games. The reason they didn't get blown the hell out against Cal is their defense stood up when Thorne was throwing those picks. Arkansas is 106th in defense. They've been decent against the run, but absolutely dreadful in coverage. And some of the quarterbacks they face have not been good. We're talking like the Jacob Zeno types, and then they had Arkansas Pine Bluff on the schedule. They actually did a decent job against Allen Bowman, but the halftime adjustments definitely cost them. Bowman had a great second half, was dreadful in the first. So I don't know. This Arkansas team has been way up and down all year, outgaining Oklahoma State 5.2 yards per play to 7.0, and then having that gap be narrower against UAB is a huge concern for me. There's a lot of injuries in Arkansas on the offensive line. Kutas is out. They have a lot of defenders that are either out or haven't played yet this year. Hudson Clark, Miguel Mitchell, Jalen Braxton. Also, Addison Nichols. He has a high ankle sprain that he's trying to play through in the offensive line. I don't know that that's good against a very stout Auburn defense. Again, like last thing on Auburn's defense, this is how they win games. They're inside the top 40 in every single major metric. So I don't know if I can do it, but man, are you on Auburn? Like, what do you think? It's all the backup QB, I think, that's really driving this.
I'm taking the stance in this game that the unknown, because I don't know anything about this guy, but the variance is good because the rest of the team is really sound. I like Auburn's defense. You mentioned the 5-star, and I saw, he got a little banged up against Cal. I think it was more, what do I know? But if it wasn't New Mexico, I think he could have probably played. I think he plays here. I'm going to embrace it because the rest of the team is pretty sound. I'm not sold on Arkansas to begin with. There's a 2.5 out there now. It's taking, you're laying some extra juice. So I'll shop it. Maybe I'll just take a 3 at -105. If this guy's even remotely serviceable and he doesn't turn it over, I think they're going to be okay here at home.
I'm strongly debating this. Yeah, I see, man, the 2.5 would be nice. The juice is like, they're pricing this like perfectly.
Yeah, I haven't bet it. I might bet it though.
I think there's a good chance I do.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be one. Again, I'm about to get to this podcast giveaway style after this game. So again, stay tuned, friends. This is an awesome game. East Carolina and Liberty. Liberty is, I would assume, the team that most people associate with the easy schedule, the ability to go undefeated and then get absolutely decimated in the new format. East Carolina is not going to be a pushover. They weren't a pushover against App State. Kind of gave that game away, in my opinion. 6-point spread. Liberty's a good team. I think East Carolina could potentially hang, though.
They definitely should have won that App State game. The biggest problem with East Carolina is their quarterback has 8 interceptions. Yeah, Jake Garcia, dude, Caden Hauser must suck. So I don't know how he can't get on the field. Garcia and this offense have been pretty good, actually, outside of the interceptions. 65% completion, 8 yards per attempt. He just has 5 touchdowns, 8 picks, and the underlying stuff isn't good. 5 big-time throws, 10 turnover-worthy plays. This is, I don't know, it's like the Jaden DeLora effect. Eventually, these quarterbacks get benched just because you need someone that can take care of the ball in these offenses. And that's like my biggest hesitation with this. I did take a 7.5 earlier because you had that extra half-point cushion around the key number. But at a 6.5 or a 7, I'm not sure I would do it. It's just like this team is so good everywhere. They're 5th in total defense right now, 6th in run defense, 50th in pass rush, 11th in coverage. That's much better than Liberty's efficiency metrics on defense. It hasn't been a cupcake schedule. They've played Old Dominion and App State. Both of those teams have shown themselves to be pretty competent so far this year. Their third game was against an FCS team, is what it is. But they outgained Old Dominion well over a yard per play. They just had the turnovers. I mean, and it's not like this is going to get better. I don't know, man. Like, people are calling for Garcia's head. I'm not sure what to make of it. Liberty, I think, is somewhat disappointed. They had the 6-point win against New Mexico, and then they beat UTEP 28-10. The yards per play was closer in both of those games than I would have liked. And I think we're starting to see that in some of the efficiency metrics. Liberty does come in ahead of East Carolina, just overall power rating, ranking them all 134 teams, have Liberty 26th, ECU 37th, which might surprise everyone. But the only reason that's not higher is the interceptions from Jake Garcia. The O-line is playing well. They're 26th in pass blocking. They're 94th in run blocking. They're going to try to throw the ball over you anyway. Liberty is 76th in coverage right now and right around the top 50 in their other defensive metrics. So it's not perfect. And I think that shows up in some of their box scores. Injury-wise, they've been kind of shuffling a little bit on the offensive line. Liberty, that is. Xavier Gray got hurt, and I'm not sure if he's been out for performance stuff or injury. Quinton Cooley, their stud running back, got hurt in their last game. He returned in street clothes. Don't expect updates on this. The reporting's really bad for schools of this level. ECU is completely healthy. They have a really clean bill of health right now. I don't even think anyone is questionable to miss this game. So, man, I think if we had an average quarterback, this should be closer to a pick'em. I think the line is probably appropriate given the quarterback woes of ECU. But, man, I took a 7.5. I'm okay with that number. Maybe with the variance, you just sprinkle like a money line or something.
Yeah, I could see that. And you mentioned that you got a 7.5. It's the perfect time. That's why you should be inside the ropes at Tails right here. Get these numbers early. And if you say, okay, I haven't been over there, you have all these different content creators and their packages. How about this, though? You want to sign up to my package and Matt's package for free for a month? Well, we're running a giveaway. Listen up, everybody. This is what we're doing. We do this show. The podcast link is in the description. If you go to that, give us a rating, give us a review, preferably positive, would be lovely. Talk about why you like the show, anything. It could be funny, normal, whatever. Leave your email in there and your name, of course. And we are going to pick a couple of them and announce it on next week's show. You're getting a free month to both Matt and my Insider Tales Discords, the marketplace, for a full month just for doing that. So if you rate and review, you are eligible. We're going to raffle a couple off. We'll have Jake Curry do it behind the scenes. Make sure you take advantage of that. It's an awesome way to get inside the ropes for a full month for free. Really cool stuff. Couldn't be more excited. So again, podcast link, you're going to see it right at the top in the description. Take a couple minutes, make yourself eligible. We'd love to have you. And we appreciate, of course, the reviews no matter what. And make sure you leave your email in there so we can get in contact with you. Miami and South Florida. This is a good game. South Florida is an awesome team. You mentioned they were, I don't know if they were sleepwalking, but they had to battle back last week, and they did. Miami's killing everybody. Now, I don't know who's scheduling Ball State and these teams, but whatever. 16.5. It's 16.5 on every single book that I see. What do you do here?
This is one where I took a bad line. I took a 17, so very happy with the 16.5. I'm surprised, man. Miami, I know, has beaten the 2 cupcakes, but we saw them demolish Florida.
Miami's amazing.
Yeah, and people might try to discount the Florida win. Florida's a quality team. If Florida played in just about any other conference other than the Big Ten or the SEC, they would be in legitimate conversations to win the conference. If Florida played in the Big 12, they might be plus 200 to win that conference. Anyway, that's a different conversation. Now we have Miami with, I think, 1 good data point, 2 easy games, but they did exactly what they were supposed to do. No fraudulence in the box scores. USF has played really bad competition in New Hampshire, really good competition in Alabama. Both outcomes were expected. And then the Southern Miss game, them getting outgained by over yards per play was very concerning. We already talked a lot about that game. Some really weird stuff, but their defense did not hang up in that game. They gave up some long touchdown drives, just very concerning stuff. The efficiency metrics for this team, they returned a lot of starters, but the early returns haven't been fantastic. The biggest issue with this team last year was their offensive line, and they brought back all these guys, but they haven't shown any growth. They're 121st in pass blocking, 111th in run blocking. A lot of you might suggest, oh, well, Alabama has something to do with that. Hard to pass block against those guys. Well, is it hard to pass block against Southern Miss and New Hampshire? There's no excuse for these metrics being that bad. Miami is the 3rd ranked passers in the country. Miami's 2nd in total defense. I don't think that's fraudulence. This team is absolutely loaded with talent. It's not just the portal. Mario Cristobal has this team recruiting at a top 5 unit year over year. There's so many elite studs. Miami is fully healthy. The only guy they've been holding out is their offensive tackle, Jalen Rivers. That's only been because they played 2 easy opponents in their last 2 games. So the O-line's fully healthy. USF's offense is already limited. Byron Brown by trade is not a pocket passer. He's a dual threat quarterback. So when your O-line is concerning, you don't have a real legitimate offense in terms of throwing the ball. You're going to have to stand on defense, which has been good. But, USF's 38th ranked defensive efficiency, trying to stand up to Cam Ward, Cam Martinez, or Strepo, this Miami O-line, I think is a lot to ask. USF also plays fast. This doesn't necessarily work in their favor. This is the 6th ranked offense in terms of pace. If you have 3 and outs, this leads to extra drives for Miami to potentially just put you away in a blowout spot. I'm definitely nervous with USF in this game, even though they're at home, which is kind of cool. Love seeing these big teams go down to small stadiums, but I'm on Miami all the way.
This game shouldn't even be, I should have done something, but here we are. I'm not one that does the I'm blacklisting a team. I can't do it anymore. I can't do it with Florida State anymore. Now, I held off last week, but I was on their side. If you ask me, I know you were much more on the Memphis side, which was clearly the more logical thing to do. Once again, I look at this and I'm like, oh my God, I don't like Cal whatsoever. I can't do it with Florida State. I don't know. Obviously, the season's beyond lost. What do you do with a game like this?
I think you either bet Cal or you pass.
Okay. Yeah. That's
I
fair.
took a +3. I wouldn't take anything less than that. And I don't know. This might just be a leak in my game. I've been like hesitant to bet all these Florida State opponents. Luckily now I've bet against them twice, which has been profitable. But it's still like the sticker shock, man. You know, like
I can't do it.
I know it's really hard. You just think to yourself, like Florida State can't be that much worse than last year, but they truly are. Overall power ranking is 110th, 103rd on offense. Surprises that high. But the biggest thing, honestly, is this defense is 113th. They're 121st in coverage, 88th in pass rush, 98th in run defense. They're missing a ton of guys. Jordan Greer, one of their defensive backs, hasn't played in week 2 or 3. I think that's likely performance, but still seeing him miss time after, like Shaheem Brown missed their last game. There's rumors that it's a suspension with him. That's a couple guys in your secondary. The linebacker room is decimated. Omar Graham, Sean Murphy, Cam Riley, Justin Cryer have all missed time. I mean, they're thin on defense too. Not to mention up front, they really miss the departures of players like Fisk. Now that you have just like Peyton having to stand by himself, this defensive line has been pushed around by teams. Cal, I think, is actually left a little bit on the field. We mentioned the turnover game against Auburn. They did not score a lot of points, but their best player, Jaden Ott, got hurt in that game. He sat out of their last contest. He's expected to be back now, which I think should add a little bit of a dynamic ability to their run game because it's kind of been non-existent without him, and he's easily their best player. Mendoza has been pretty good at quarterback. He has a 70% completion percentage, 6.8 yards per attempt, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. The big time throw turnover worthy play ratio is solid for him. He can't run, but the O-line has been, I think, a little suspect. This is probably the biggest concern. He's been able to overcome it, and he's done it without, I think, his top 2 receivers. Merriweather and Grace haven't played yet this year. They've just been playing like 6 receivers 50% of the snaps. But they still have some talented guys, like Mikey Matthews, a 4-star. And Mendoza himself is a 4-star who didn't start till halfway through last year. So there's a little bit of promise. This isn't some scrub they picked up off the street. Man, I think I'm just selling Florida State in every game right now. Honestly, the biggest concern is probably just Cal having to repeatedly travel across the country. I don't know. There's a long travel schedule for Cal, but I don't think you can back Florida State, man. They don't have a single good metric. And it's not just Uagalele. This team is horrible. Their line has been atrocious. They've missed a couple guys there. Byers has been out. Washington has been out. That's 2 tackles for this team. We've said this many times. What they have at receiver is just pure negligence, considering they go from Jaheim Bell and Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman to like Malik Benson as your number 1. I don't know, man. Like this Florida State team isn't, I'm not breaking news here. They're an utter disaster.
Do you think Norvell's in any danger?
I just don't know enough about the ins and outs of Florida's like NIL situation, who's managing the roster. The biggest concern with Norvell this year is like he's got to bench Uagalele at some point. And I'm not at practice, so perhaps Brock Glenn is truly that bad behind him. I don't know, man.
I don't have a third. Yeah, I don't. Whatever. I have no idea. But
if he's managing the roster, this is egregious. But I don't know just don't know the program well enough to know that stuff. I think he's been a talent maximizer until this year.
So have I. I just can't believe this. All right. NC State and Clemson. Clemson's another team. Talk about not optimizing anything, but they're a pretty sizable favorite here. And I think this is NC State's kind of been exposed. Tennessee walloped them. Clemson nuclear destroyed Appalachian State. They had like 60 points in the first half style. Georgia's Georgia. I don't really know where these teams are at. I can't see myself betting NC State, but I'm also not sure I want to lay upwards of 3 touchdowns with Clemson.
It's exactly that. This line moved about 3 points when Grayson McCall got moved out. Now you go to the freshman CJ Bailey. Just as a minuscule sample, so I don't think we can really read too much into that. The only thing I'll say here is McCall has been downright dreadful for this team, literally costing them games. And it's not just with his arm, too. There were multiple times, like against Tennessee, where he had opportunities to run for first downs and he just slid short of the sticks. I remember 2 instances specifically where he did that and cost them and their team had to turn the ball over. But still, is going from a bad Grayson McCall to a freshman quarterback worth 3 points? I'm not 100% sure because I still have a lot of questions with Clemson and their approach. They lost a ton of talent on defense this offseason. They got just decimated by Georgia, and then they played a Sun Belt team, a good Sun Belt team at that. But it's like they're probably somewhere in the middle of those 2 showings. How good actually are they? It's a question I have. I'm not saying they're bad. But on the other side, NC State's defense has also been pretty bad as well. They were outgained yards per play to Louisiana Tech, 5.9 to 5.2. Probably a pure stay away. The only way I would consider this is if Clemson gets beyond a 21. If you get like 21 and a half, I would be okay with it. Bailey does look like he has some talent. He's a good rusher, which is just like a different flavor to the offense. I like some of their weapons. Concepcion is awesome. Just very tough to trust this team right now with the new. What a tough spot to play. Your first start as a freshman.
Yeah, that in Death Valley, that's frowning.
Yeah.
I will say, if you told me, okay, your team, you're starting like an unknown freshman, what's one thing you would want from him? I would say the ability to run. Like, I think if you're really that, at least you can just do that. You just tell him to run, and it wastes time if nothing else. So I think that helps.
That's another thing too, is I don't think pace is going to be good in this game. NC State is 132nd in pace. Clemson is 84th. So the value of the point might be pretty good. The over-under is really low, so I'm not really considering that. But, like a 21 and a half, if that were to come,
yeah,
with this beyond 3 scores, I would have interest. I maybe even would consider at 21. We'll see what happens. You might be able to pick this up live, if Clemson gets the opening kick or something, scores.
Yeah, like a 24.
You might be able to get a decent number on NC State. Watch that.
Toledo. This is a team, it's early, but early returns, I think it's pretty fair to say they'll be in the conversation, certainly the class of the MAC. They take on the Hilltoppers, who are wearing that sweet helmet with the cool guy. Can't factor that in enough. Love the Hilltoppers. 2.5 point spread, though. Toledo looks pretty good. What do you see in this matchup?
Very interested in the Toledo side. I debated taking this. Just some hesitation. They had a lot of turnover this year. I guess their coach is awesome, so him getting the most out of players like Gleason, who haven't played a ton, is encouraging. I mean, this guy has awesome efficiency metrics so far. 61.5% completion for almost 9 yards per attempt, 9 touchdowns, no interceptions. Interestingly, he's leaning a lot in his skill players, though. He doesn't have a single big-time throw, 1 turnover-worthy play. So seeing 9 touchdowns come out of that is a bit surprising. Not the most mobile guy. And the O-line is allowing a 38% pressure rate, 106th in pass blocking, 55th in run blocking. So there's a couple concerns with this team. Underlying, I think their box scores have been slightly misleading. Mississippi State was atrocious, and they definitely left points on the board. They had a chance to score at the end of the halftime, and they decided to go for it instead and threw a pick. So that game should have been a little closer. Toledo still certainly should have won, so I won't go that far. But, the yards per play difference between Toledo and UMass wasn't drastic. UMass just had some turnovers. They threw an interception that basically gave Toledo a 73-yard touchdown. They had an explosive play the very next play. That was a 1-play, 73-yard touchdown drive for Toledo. So a little noisy here, but I just don't think I can back Western Kentucky at any point right now. They lost their QB, Finley. Veltkamp actually has some experience and some very good efficiency metrics in a very limited sample. But this Western Kentucky defense might be the worst in the entire country. They just allowed 14.7 yards per pass attempt to Nick Vadiato of Middle Tennessee State, who's power rated like across the industry as a bottom 15 team in the country. At first, like Jalen Milroe averaged 22.5 yards per attempt. You're like, oh, well, it's Jalen Milroe playing a G5 team. Nick Vadiato is not Jalen Milroe. This defense, they're 130th in pass coverage. Like Gleason should eat this defense up. Can't rush the passer. They're decent in run defense, but who cares? When you have a fatal flaw like this, you don't even need to worry about that. So, yeah, man, I guess concerns on both sides. Toledo's O-line is a little concerning to me. But I think it's Toledo or pass, man. This team just looks vastly better, and that fatal flaw for Western Kentucky is going to hurt them.
No doubt about it. Those are bad numbers. All right,
9.5 yards per play to Middle Tennessee. Every time.
Nope.
That's a first down every single time you run a play.
Yeah, and it's Middle Tennessee State, who's nobody.
And that should have been way worse. Like, here's how the drives ended for Middle Tennessee State. Turnover on downs, a 4th and 3 in Western Kentucky territory. A 4th and 1 turnover on downs at the 1 yard line. They had an interception at the Western Kentucky 13, and they had a final turnover on downs at the Western Kentucky 36. That's 4 trips into Western Kentucky territory, 2 into the red zone that ended in no points.
Yeah, that's not it. That's not the ticket, let me tell you. I'm going to end up – Toledo's very probably going to be on my card. Again, you get in Discord. The links are below, and you will see the final card for sure. This is real greasy, but it's right up the Owls against Army. I don't really know what to make of this game. First of all, I'm in New York, so I can't bet it anyway. But I wanted to ask you about Army had a lot of turnover, but they seem to be all right. Maybe the FAU data point is going to be an outlier. But what do you make of this? I haven't seen Rice at all this year. They're never good, but are they okay this year? Or are they just standard Rice?
This might be a good thing you're in New York, because I did take a Rice ticket this morning and I don't feel good about it. Rice has a lot of similarities to ECU, where their team has looked very good, but their quarterback has cost them, which is kind of surprising because EJ Warner sort of maximized what Temple. Yeah.
Owl to owl transfer. I like that. He transfers by nickname. Very standard.
He got benched in their last game, and I kind of think he's going to remain benched. 62% completion percentage, 4.9 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 4 picks, 2 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays. We know he cannot run. And this is against Sam Houston State. They got blown out by 20 points. Then they beat Texas Southern. And then they got blown out to Houston 33-7. In like the cover margins, the Rice opponents outside of Texas Southern have just been slaughtering the spread. So they haven't even been close to living up to expectation. But you dive into the efficiency metrics here, because this team returned almost their whole team. 4th in pass blocking, which makes a lot of sense. They run this like pseudo air raid. 118th in run blocking. They don't try to run the ball. That's actually very similar to last year. But Rice's defense is 16th overall, 31st against the run, 7th against the pass. A lot of their problems have just been the tons of turnovers that this offense is causing. I mean, 2 turnovers against Sam Houston, 2 turnovers against Houston themselves, just vastly costly turnovers. I actually think the defense has held up relatively well. They held Donovan Smith to 6.8 yards per attempt. And I mean, that's a power 4 team. On the other side, I don't really know what to make of Army. The FAU data point is good, but other than that, they played Lehigh. And that game was a little bit weird against FAU. They crushed them in yards per play. Army got to play from ahead, and I truly don't have like a good explanation for this. But it's still, the triple option offense. The underlying metrics for Army aren't that good, especially when Rice is 31st in run defense. I have concerns. Army's 110th in total defensive efficiency, 88th against the run, 108th in coverage. That's concerning considering they played relatively well against FAU. Tells me FAU left a lot on the table, and then Lehigh. So with the gap in efficiency, I will take the points with Rice. I'm terrified because I don't know who they start at quarterback. There's rumors that it's going to be this backup, Drew DeViller, who had a great 4th quarter, but that's literally the only we've seen him. Only time we've seen him is in that 4th quarter. But again, it's like McCall or East Carolina. What is, like, when you talk about quarterbacks being out and how much it's worth to the spread, when your starter is atrocious, going to a backup, I don't think is that impactful. But I don't know. What do you think on this? I'm kind of nervous.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing, again, sometimes you just get early in the season a data point that doesn't make sense. If I'm trusting my read on Army, I don't really understand how they're upwards of a touchdown favorite here. I saw Army in person last year. I would know. No, I mean, I just don't really see it. And you mentioned Rice. First of all, they're not going to be totally fish out of water against a triple option. They know how to defend this, no doubt. And I think the data point that you already just illustrated, if your quarterback is not doing anything, it's just like Auburn. I would embrace the unknown of the backup because it can't be that much worse. And if it's a high variance situation and you're getting points, like to me, Rice money line would probably be the more prudent move, just because if this guy is good, Rice might have been the rightful favorite in the game. And if he sucks, then your 6 points might not help you.
The other thing is, like sometimes teams that get the opening kickoff against Army and score right away, when you play these service academies and then they're forced to play with a deficit, they basically can't play anymore. Like the game is essentially over. We've seen this against both of San Jose State's competent opponents. They got up barely in games against Air Force and Kennesaw State. And then it's just like San Jose State kind of leads. I don't know if they lead the country. They're like top 5 in turnover margin. It's like, yeah, you took a bunch of interceptions from 2 triple option teams that were trying to throw the ball when they were down. What do you expect?
With Wyoming against Arizona State, the game was literally over in like 2 minutes. Now, Wyoming turned out to be the worst team I've ever seen, but the point still stands.
They just can't have their. That's a conversation for them. We don't need to rip on Svoboda any more than
very bad. That is a conversation for another time. Another Owls, Temple. We just talked about them. Temple's bad, but the one defense that Temple has is they've played some really good teams. So maybe they're not that bad. This is an opportunity for them. They're still an underdog, but I'm not high on Utah State at all. We saw USC dust them, and basically Utah State's probably where they should be record-wise. You think this could be a competitive game?
I have no idea what to make of this game. It's very challenging. Spencer Petras allegedly is going to return. Is that an upgrade on Bryson Barnes? Maybe as a passer, these guys are just vastly different in their skill sets. Petras is a pocket passer. Barnes' main skill is his dual threat ability, but the O-line is bad. 35% pressure rate allowed. Their number 1 receiver, Jalen Royals, was probably going to miss this game. He had what looked like a head injury. You're just not going to get reporting out of Utah State. But if it is a concussion, it's a very difficult turnaround on just a week's time. Temple, you mentioned their schedule. They outgained Coastal Carolina in yards per play pretty clearly, too. So the first time they get into like a competent opponent that's not just going to blow them out of the water, 5.1 yards per play for Temple, 4.6 for Coastal Carolina. And I guess like Navy's probably not that competent, but I do think they're far and away the best service academy. It was a blowout loss there and then a blowout loss to Oklahoma. But they played a different quarterback in their most recent game. Evan Simon came in. He's the Rutgers transfer. That was injury-related. Forrest Brock had a wrist contusion, so I don't know who's going to play quarterback. That's a big hesitation if I'm looking at Temple. They also just have a ton of guys out still. The top 2 receivers are still out. One of their linebackers still out. Outside of Royals and Petras, Utah State's pretty healthy. Just 2 pretty damn bad teams, man. I don't think there's anything really to do with this game. I'm definitely not betting Temple, and I don't think I really want to back Utah State either.
I'll keep an eye on it. If it gets to 7, I'll look at Temple. If it doesn't, I'm not betting Utah State. I don't like this team whatsoever. Not a fan. Not a fan. Kansas State and BYU. This is a good game. BYU, they beat SMU. Fair play to them. I still don't think they're any good. Tough spot, though, for Kansas State. You got to hit the road here. You got to go to Provo. It's 6.5-point spread. Does Kansas State just simply out-talent them, or is this going to be a potential upset spot?
Yeah, you mentioned Provo is very difficult to play, probably like a top 3 home environment with the elevation. So very, very difficult place to play. I've been disappointed with Kansas State, man. They were outgained yards per play against Tulane, 7.4 to 7.1, some turnovers. Like Mensa just loves turning the ball over in the final waning seconds of the game to have these go-away losses. But their defense has been really bad, man. And they lost a lot of production from that defense. Their O-line has been somewhat suspect here too. Right now, they're 78th in pass blocking, 92nd in run blocking. We know they lost some very talented players to the NFL there. And BYU has quietly surprised me a little bit. They're actually 26th in run defense, 30th in coverage, which has kept them in a lot of games. They shut down SMU's offense. And while SMU was able to get in field goal range a lot, SMU only was at 3.6 yards per play. That's very low. The quarterbacks did absolutely nothing in that game. And outside of that, I mean, playing Swoboda definitely helps your defensive metrics. And teams are just literally loading the box against Wyoming right now. So that's not like a great data point. And other than that, it was an FCS team they faced who couldn't throw the ball. So I didn't have a great rating on BYU coming into the season. What they've done is impressive to me, the SMU game primarily. But I'm not really like a Retzloff guy. He has more turnover-worthy plays and big-time throws. Their O-line, I think, still is questionable, 25% pressure rate allowed. It's just Kansas State's also been really questionable, so I don't think I can lay points with them either on the road. And it's just south of a touchdown. Like, that's still a lot of points to lay with this team.
6.5. This is a no go for me. I do not want to lay these points, but I'm not backing BYU. Keep an eye on the game, maybe something live, but that's late night. Hopefully by that time I'm up so much that I'm just coasting and chilling. Maybe I'll splash. A couple more games left. Again, if you have any questions on any games we don't get to, Matt_Gajeski at JazzRazBets, or again, get into the Tails Marketplace. Those links are below. You can do it via the podcast giveaway and try to get a free month, or you just sign up. We'd love to have you. Again, both of us. Great communities, fun, talking bets, dropping plays, everything you want and more in there. Really come give it a try. Tulsa and Louisiana Tech. This is greasy. What the hell is this game? I've seen Tulsa quite a bit because I bet them against Northwestern State, who did turn out to be the worst team we've ever seen, by the way. They gave up 90 points to South Alabama. That's not even a joke. Then I watched Tulsa march up and down the field. I hope you have metrics on this because I want to hear it, against Oklahoma State and just do nothing with it. Now they take on Louisiana Tech, who I have not seen at all. What is this game bringing us?
That Oklahoma State game was atrocious.
I can't with that. It was insane. They had so many chances. The drops and the missed field goal and the turnovers. Oh my God, it was so frustrating.
They have a really bad kicker, man, and he's hitting 50% of his field goals this year. They missed a field goal in this game. I know they got down, but I think this is kind of a twofold problem where you're in borderline field goal range and they don't trust this guy enough, so they'll go for it instead, which leads to just hyper volatility. Instead of taking 3, you end up with 0, or maybe you like convert and you end up getting 6, but they did not convert their turnover on down opportunities in this game, and they directly led to Oklahoma State points on 2 occasions. There were a lot of like interceptions too. You know, they traded interceptions back and forth in the third quarter. But they did have pretty good production on offense. 5.1 yards per play against a Power 4 team is still very good. Oklahoma State has an atrocious defense, but is what it is. I don't know. The kicker situation is atrocious. In this game, I want to bet an over, but I have some hesitance, and partially because both of these teams are atrocious on special teams, so you have this hyper volatility. But both teams are fast. Tulsa 29th in pace, Louisiana Tech 41st. Both these teams are going to pass a good amount. Tulsa at 51.5%. Louisiana Tech is pure air raid, 66%. Both defenses are questionable. Tulsa's 109th, Louisiana Tech 123. What are their coverage units like? You got 2 teams that like to pass. Well, Tulsa's 119th, Louisiana Tech is 93rd. Neither team can rush the passer. Tulsa 101, Louisiana Tech 130. Overall, the defense is really bad for these 2 teams. Pace is good, pass rate is good, and I think the offenses are fine. Tulsa is actually 26th in total offensive efficiency. They have a good O-line that's protecting Kirk Francis. He's been a bit of an issue. He has a lot of turnover-worthy plays, 5 of them, but he's also been doing a good job with the ball. They have some very good receivers on this team like Canton Benjamin, and their defense has been horrible, so I think this can lead to a shootout. Tulsa's also healthy. Louisiana Tech, I think, is a little more questionable on offense, but this team also has some pretty decent underlying metrics that can hopefully fix some of the poor play. Their O-line is good. They're 23rd in pass blocking. They've been susceptible with their run blocking, but again, this is an air raid team. They're not trying to run the ball. Jack Turner, 52.5% completion, but the backup, when he was in the game at times, like immediately threw 2 interceptions for this team. I do think Turner gives them the best chance to win. And hopefully you can just rely on your receiving game and beat up on the 119th Tulsa ranked secondary. I haven't bet this yet. I wanted to hear what you thought, but I'm seriously considering an over. And if you made me pick a side, it would be Tulsa.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been already doing this, so you know kind of where I stand. I thought that Tulsa just primed for overs, and it hasn't worked, and it's been frustrating because they can move the ball. Their defense is garbage. They play fast. I like the over once again. 57.5 is out there. You have to convert. There is hyper volatility. There's no doubt about it, but you just have to convert some of these. It was just disgraceful the way they were marching up and down the field. And the Oklahoma State's defense is a joke, but still, you should be able to do better with that. I think they will. I actually think Tulsa also is very live to win the game.
I think they should win the game.
Like,
what do you see? +3?
There's a 3.5 out there.
3.5. I only have 3s on my end.
Or I made that up. Let me make sure. I'm almost positive there is a 3.5. Now it might be.
I live in Wisconsin, so
yeah,
there's
there's a 3.5. There's 2 3.5s out there. Yeah, they're out there.
What's the juice?
-114.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. Yep, definitely out there. All right, we got one more. Then we're going to do our best bets. Recap Tulane and Louisiana. These teams actually might be pretty good. You mentioned Tulane. They gave Kansas State all they could handle and then some. Louisiana, I saw them play somebody at some point. I forget who it was. Kennesaw, and they handled them. 3-point spread here. I don't know. Seems like a very competitive game.
I'm pretty interested in an under. Louisiana is 133rd in pace. I think some of that has to do with facing Kennesaw, but this team definitely does not want to play fast. We've seen this kind of for years now. So that immediately stands out as a concern. They also want to run the ball with Wooldridge under center. I think this makes a lot of sense. They have a 37.5% pass rate. And Tulane's not fast on the other side. They're 55th in pace. They're slightly above average. But I think first and foremost, you get dragged into this pretty slow game environment. Tulane's defense has been a little susceptible this year, but I also think that's the product of playing Kansas State and Oklahoma. I do think they've left a little bit on the board, and I expect them to be better in future weeks just against opponents of their own level of competition in the G5. Louisiana's defense has been good, and they returned most of their defense from last year, which was also good. So I'm not going to read too much into the box score metrics and the efficiency metrics. Everything checks out for me here. So pace-wise, defense-wise, I think all this holds up. I was surprised to see this number pretty high, but I haven't taken it yet because, again, another game at the end. When we get into the greasy section, really want your opinions on these games too.
Yeah, this is a team I saw some of the pace metrics, and I do agree. You mentioned stylistically, Louisiana doesn't have any incentive to play fast. The level of competition does matter, and when you play Kennesaw, you get dragged down a little bit, but I think they were more comfortable in that type of pace anyway. There's 54.5s out there across the board. It's a good number. Fine with that. I'm not betting the side. I'll tell you that.
I was in the 50s, man. I was expecting like a 51.
Yeah.
This game with the implied team total essentially is like like it needs to be almost 31, like 24 or something for it to come over. That's a lot of points.
It's a weird game. Like I said, this is a very competitive game. I don't have a lean on who I think even wins the game, but I could see this game being played, 27-24.
That's what I think we get.
Okay. Well, we'll take a couple totals at the end here. All right. I do want to ask you kind of one extra game. Georgia Tech and Louisville play. It's a good game. It's a pretty big spread. Did you just have gut feel? You don't have to go crazy. But feel free to open it up a little rapid fire if there's any games we didn't get to, and then we'll get to best bets.
Louisville has played 2 cupcakes, Austin Peay and Jacksonville State. I did have them ahead of Georgia Tech in power rankings to start the year, but not vastly. I think there were some concerns with the team, like you go to Tyler Shugg at quarterback, who's looked good when he's played, but he's never healthy. Georgia Tech, we have a lot of key data points with already. They played Florida State and Syracuse, the Syracuse game being very tight. And FSU, obviously, that game doesn't look quite as good as maybe it once did.
No.
It's a talented Georgia Tech team. They're coming off a VMI win, so they got like a pseudo bye week. But I think there's a chance we might just be buying high on Louisville. I want to bet against them at some point. I was waiting to see where this went in the market because money came in on Louisville right away and then sort of normalized. Like a 10.5 was out there. I would consider that strongly. Georgia Tech or pass, just trying to see if we can't get a better number.
Yeah, it's bounced around. Now there's 9.5s. It's going the other way. But there are plenty of 10s out there. I don't see any 10.5s though.
I waited too long, it seems.
Yeah, I waited too long too, by the way. I saw this and I was like, man, that's a lot of points. And then I just continued living my life like a fool. So I don't.
Yeah, there are a lot of 10s. I don't see any 10.5s either.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, we'll keep an eye on it. There'll be plenty more. But best bets time. We talked about a bunch of games. Couple, you narrow them down. Someone asks you, for all the greasy games, where would you start your ticket? Not here. It has South Alabama. Go ahead.
My South Alabama, they're not on there. Indiana, Miami, 2 big favorites. I would say those are my top 2. I'm like debating how to rank the other ones because a lot of them have moved. I'll say those 2 to start and let you go pick some and see if I can add one later.
I'm jumping in on Toledo. Inside 3. I just trust this team. You mentioned I trust their coach. Western Kentucky can't stop anybody. I got no problem with backing Toledo in this spot. If you wanted me to give a second one, again, I'm probably gonna have even weirder stuff in the Discord. I'm gonna go to bat for this over in the Tulsa game. It's just something I've already done, so this is not a great thing to say, but there's kind of like I've been betting the Tulsa overs, and I kind of want to stick with the process. But I really do think that Tulsa's a perpetually undervalued team in the sense of how crazy they play, and I think we do see that normalize for points. So I'll throw those 2 out there. If you have any more, good. If not, we can make a little 4-pack.
Yeah, I think that's it for me. There's a lot I haven't taken yet, but yeah. I'm probably gonna go pass over the board now that I got your opinion on a lot of these games.
Back to the lab we go.
Like under in the Louisiana game, the over in the Tulsa game, Toledo, probably Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn could be on my card as well. I'm gonna get some weird stuff going. Again, there's so much good college football. It's such a fun time here at Betting You. That's why we're so excited for you guys to get involved. Again, take advantage of everything in the links in the description. From the podcast giveaway to tails to Bet365, 5 into 200, all of this good stuff. And as always, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and thanks for supporting. Good luck, friends. Let's cash some tickets, and we'll do it again next week.